So today we're going to talk about MITRE Att&ck framework. This is an explained session. That means it's 30 minutes. It's high level, and we will do a deep dive about MITRE from a more technical standpoint. That's 1 hour session. We're going to talk more about that later on. So for those who don't know me, my name is Stijn van Hof. I'm a business development manager at Exclusive Networks. I've been here since 2017. I came in the pre-sales team, so I got a technical background, and I'm over the 8 years now in IT security. My focus today is really on the emerging vendors and technologies. It's an explained session, so it's vendor agnostic, and we're not going to talk about vendors today. We're going to talk about technology and about MITRE Att&ck framework. We do a lot of those type of sessions, and we do a lot of vendor sessions, but also vendor agnostic sessions about AD security, SASE, and so on. But I'm not alone today. I do have some support. We have two pre-sales here. One is David de Mitz, and the other one is Yuri, who is here today as a backup. If the questions gets too difficult for me, they can help me out also. So let's talk about MITRE. First of all, what is MITRE? Because everyone knows the MITRE framework, but not a lot of people know what the MITRE organization actually does. Neither did I. So I did some checks, and I was actually astonished that they were established in 1958. So that means they existed long before there was any sign of cybersecurity. But they have over 7,000 employees, and the mission statement, and that's kind of cool, and that explains why they're also active in the cyber security landscape, is first of all, advanced national security. So it's US based, so they work with the federal government a lot, and they cooperate, and they're also well funded by the government. But they also serve the public as an independent advisor. And their motto is discover, create, lead. So that's why they're also very active in the cybersecurity landscape. We know MITRE also from the CVE database, so the Common Vulnerability and Exposures. That means that if there's a new exploit out, they will document it. They say what the impact is, and they give it a score about how dangerous it actually is. Another part you know about MITRE is the attack framework, but also the MITRE ENGENUITY Evaluations. So we're going to talk about both of them, but more focus today on the MITRE Att&ck framework itself. So what is MITRE Att&ck? Well, it started as a research development project that they had in 2013. So the idea there was to model a document because they want to track the different techniques that attackers can use. Because we have the different stages, we're going to talk about those stages of a cyber attack. And then, so from the beginning to the infiltration in your network to the actual of data, and then maybe go out with a bang. We already had the cyber attack chain. We're going to talk about that also, but there was need for something more structured. So the MITRE Att&ck framework, they had the attack framework, they have named it of the data it collects. So you get your adversarial tactics, the techniques, and the common knowledge, also known as the procedures. It's been available since 2015, and it really keeps on evolving. So if you take a look at the MITRE Att&ck framework back in 2015, and now it's a huge difference. We have more tactics, a lot more techniques, and way more different procedures. So the goal of MITRE Att&ck was really, okay, we have the whole attack threat cycle, and we see a lot of different type of attackers, and adversaries have that specific behavior. And so we see they come in a specific way, they're going to go lateral in a specific way, and they're going to exfiltrate and collect data. But there was not really a good framework or platform to map that, so you can actually compare it to other groups that are attacking different companies. So you really needed a structured framework to do that. And that's why they actually, that's the goal of MITRE, is to provide you that structured framework so you can communicate in a common language with other defenders out there to actually detect and stop those type of attacks. Because if you talk the same language, you're going to understand each other. So that's the goal of MITRE. But before we're going to do a deep dive of MITRE, we also need to explain some other stuff, like, for example, what is an APT, and more in detail, the APT group. So an APT is actually an advanced persistent threat. In a nutshell, it's not a script kiddie who just runs a script that's maybe encrypting your files. No, it's really an attack with multiple phases and a real goal behind it. Okay, it starts from the recon, going in somewhere with a backdoor to get back in it, get some extra rights, go there, the privilege escalation. That means your normal user, you want to have more rights, you want to go to domain control, you want to be domain admin, you want to clear out the databases and stuff like that and collect data, and then go out again. So that's multiple phases. That's what we call an advanced persistent threat. And who uses that? This is a combination of different techniques that they're going to use. And it could be individuals or groups and governments. And if you're going to talk about groups and governments, we're going to talk about APT groups. But an APT itself is just the attack flow. We're going to talk about, if you mention that, an APT, but an APT group is a group that uses a specific attack flow. There are all different reasons why people or groups are doing that. It could be espionage, it could be financially driven, and a lot of times if it's financial driven, think about the whole extortion, think about actually encrypting everything and then asking bitcoins for it. So that's mostly financial driven, but also political, just try to wipe out a nation on a cyber scale. So different motives means also different groups. So there are a lot of APT groups out there. Every year they're coming extra groups in it. This is, for example, from the M-Trends report from Mandiant. They monitor a lot of incident responses and breaches, and they do the survey, and then they check about, okay, we have all these type of different groups. They are motivated in some way financially or more from government to attack other nations, other countries. And they all have their specific way about how they're going to attack a company. And because they developed some kind of exploit they're going to use and keep on using, so they don't really share that much information with each other. You can buy stuff from them, but it's really they try to develop their own stuff and attack you with it. But we see a lot of common technology they're going to use also. And then, okay, then the question is, who do they target? Again, from the M-Trends reports, if you see, it's really focused on the whole banking industry and professional industry, but also healthcare. And like I mentioned before, those APTs, they go after certain verticals, and they really have their modus operandi. So the MO for an APT is usually the same, which means that in healthcare, you usually see the same APT groups focusing on healthcare and also using the same modus operandi. So with that in mind, now let's talk about the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So the need for attack framework was, again, the common language, because we had the cyber kill chain. Okay, this is developed by Lockheed Martin in 2011, so before the attack framework. And it's okay, it gives you a good overview of an attack, but that is actually it. All right, this is very high level, and there's no way to really map out an entire attack in detail and then compare it to other ones. So that's why really there was, you get your different stages, and it's quite similar of the cyber attack framework, but it's still a little different. So we needed something for more detailed. And this is the reason why. So I know it's very small, it's just to give you a high overview about the different tactics and techniques you can use and map in the attack framework. So a lot more detail than the cyber kill chain. And you can also see this version 12 already. So every year they're gonna update it with, tactics are quite stable, but all the time new techniques and especially new procedures. What is an adversarial tactic? Because that's first, you have to understand it before we can move on. The tactic answers the question, why are they using that attack technique? So in other words, what is the objective that the attacker is trying to achieve? It's all well documented with different IDs, a name, and more important, description of that name. So let's zoom in on, for example, lateral movement, and you see, okay, what the goal is, why are they using that technique is lateral movement. The adversary is trying to move through your environment. So your attacker is already inside, maybe just a workstation or a server without any admin rights. The goal is to move lateral to get more access to better servers, better credentials, and then that you can collect data and do data exfil. And the techniques will answer the question, how are they going to achieve that? So we have, again, we have 14 different tactics. but we have a lot more techniques and even sub-techniques. So the technique for lateral movement, for example, there are a lot of different ones. And very popular is remote services. We even have sub-techniques. So in remote services, we can say, okay, let's use remote desktop protocol. RDP is very well-known protocol, also used a lot to spread malware because it's a remote service. And you can attack it from outside an organization if they were enabled from the outside, but also internally in an organization, RDP is commonly used and commonly exploited also. So very good technique to go lateral. So now you have, okay, the tactic lateral movement. We have the technique. So now talk about the procedure or the common knowledge. So in the attack, we already had our tactics, adversarial tactics. We had our techniques, and now the common knowledge, also known as procedures. A lot of people in cybersecurity will also know the terms as TTP. So tactics, techniques, and procedures. The procedures ask a question: what are you going to use to achieve that objective? So we decided, okay, let's go lateral movement is our tactic. Our technique is the exploitation of remote services. And then it's small, but no worries. We're going to use the procedure NotPetya internal blue. So what does that mean? NotPetya was used by the NotPetya group for attacking systems to go lateral inside a network. For example, the attack on Marsk was a side effect of NotPetya, because NotPetya actually did a supply chain attack to cripple Ukraine, and then it spread out because it used a worm to go lateral, but it went lateral very fast on a lot of networks, including the one of Marsk. So that's a procedure. We're going to use the internal blue exploit. It's an exploit they used to attack systems with RDP enabled. And that way they had remote admin rights on that system. So that was the procedure. So now you understand the flow of the MITRE ATT&CK framework with the tactics, the tactics, the technique, and then a procedure. Remember when I said that a lot of those APTs, it's a whole flow in the cyber attack chain? Well, it looks like this, for example. A specific attack can be mapped to the MITRE framework when we say, okay, our initial access was by remote services, for example, because it was enabled from the outside. And then that way we could do code execution, we go lateral, and so on. So the way we can use this now is we can map our entire attack, which means we can also use this to build our defenses, because we know how they work. We can build our defenses also. And now you're asking, okay, this is cool, but it looks difficult and a lot of work, and that's true. But why do we do that? Well, because in the good old days, we could just say, okay, we're gonna find in our network some hashes, IP addresses. That's quite easy to do. So yeah, the search of that is quite easy, but it's also very easy for an attacker to change hashes and to use other IP addresses. So that's not value anymore to look on. It's easy to change for an attacker. It's very hard for an attacker to change tactics and techniques. So it's also harder to detect, but way harder for an adversary to find a whole new technique. So that's why, and with a pyramid of pain, searching on TTPs and making sure you have those covered will make sure you have a way better detect and protect rate. So navigating the MITRE ATT&CK, like I mentioned before, the tactics are quite stable. So they added 3 since 2018. Techniques are being added all the time, but really the procedures are being developed as we speak because it's so popular. There are so many ways, new exploits coming out every day for different type of applications, but also operation systems and so on. So, okay, what's next? How do you determine the current coverage of your organization? And okay, if you have that coverage, what's next? Where do I put focus? What is my priority in that case? Well, first of all, check your current solutions. You can ask your partner, your vendor, your distributor to help you out with that. And a good solution should be able to map that, but also if it's a solution like an EDR and it's triggering on something, or an NDR, they should say, okay, based on what are you triggering? So you know, okay, based on this technique, my EDR is showing now that there's an issue or an incident in my organization. There are a lot of vendors who will have mapped that out for you already, so you can just use that in your own matrix you're going to build. But to be fair, a lot of vendors are going to say, yeah, we covered that, but there are a lot of limitations maybe. So don't be afraid to really ask some difficult questions or ask more neutral parties, because some vendors claim to cover stuff that they actually can't cover. And then you can compile a total picture for yourself. That's with a Attack Navigator. It's a very cool tool where you can just create your own mapping on the attack framework. It's a really cool tool, Attack Navigator, and you can create your own layer, or you can load in an existing layer. And this is an example of the Windows logs plus sysmon, and it's just data collecting on the endpoint. And if you have a solution like an XDR or SIEM solution who can correlate that information, you will be able to have that coverage on the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So that's quite cool that you have a view. Okay, if I collect this one and I send this to my SIEM and he doesn't the necessary correlation rules, I'm able to cover these type of attacks. And then, okay, you have your current coverage. Where do I need to put focus on? And that's priorities, because it's hard work, but it will pay off eventually. First of all, use the reports out there. One of my favorites is trends reports. They come out every year. I think in April the new version will come, but this one's from last year. And they really focus on, okay, what are the top 10 most frequently seen techniques that we saw in 2021? And then you can really see, okay, this top 10, and then you can compare with your current coverage. In that way, you're gonna make sure the products that I have installed are covering the basic needs that we need to have as an organization. More specific type of technologies also. But also focus on the industry you're in, because a lot of those APT groups will focus on the same type of industries, and that attack usually looks the same, or yeah, similar. So for example, this was the attack on Ireland, I think last year, on the healthcare industry in Ireland. It's called Wizard Spider is APT group, and this is the way that they used their MO. So from the initial access until the exfiltration, the impact, this is how they work. So this gives you a good idea as a healthcare or a hospital in Belgium, that this should be the basic, all right? If you see other countries, healthcare is being under attack, and this is the way they used to attack them, make sure you have that covered, also as an organization. And there are many use cases that we can use MITRE for. Some are more for more mature organizations. And for example, if you have an adversary emulation, so red teaming, they will definitely use scenarios that they will check, okay, what are some APTs using in your vertical, and they're gonna try to do the same to see really, okay, I'm gonna mimic the attack of the Wizard Spider APT. Let's see how well are you performing to defend that. And also the other way around, some larger organizations will be able to do blue teaming exercising, and they can say, okay, let's build our security based on those adversary emulations. So it's really, they are challenging each other, and they're going to use the MITRE framework because it's that common language that they can use. You can always say, okay, let's collect threat intel. There are ways to do this for free, because you just need to look at the reports. There's a very large community, and especially for MITRE, it's community driven also. With information you can use, or you can go with specific vendors who can sell you threat intel also, or enable that on your data lake, for example. And there are EDR vendors out there who say, okay, let's search for specific TTPs in that organization based on the data lake you have. Your EDR tool is sending all that information to the data lake, and they will put on a service over it, and they check that with techniques they see in the wild or upcoming. But I think that on the right, the prioritized defenses, this is important for every organization, even the smaller ones, is, okay, what techniques are you blocking? And that should be the focus. Again, prioritize the top 10 of the M reports is very important, but also check what your competitors are doing, or your colleagues are doing to make sure you can block that type of attacks, because those advanced persistent threat groups, they're really going to focus on specific verticals, and they will keep on doing that because, yeah, it works in one hospital, they're going to try to go for the next hospital also. They're not going to change a vertical very quick. They're really focused on what they do. And I think it's important that every organization will try to increase their detection rates because prevention is still very important. You need to invest in that, but you will not be able to prevent that an APT is going to breach you. And the whole assumed breach is with a reason. That's one of the first one, initial access, but there is a lot more that can happen in your organization once you've been breached. So it's really, and the MITRE ATT&CK framework is like a checker map where you're gonna say, all right, we need to hit at a certain step, the sooner the better, but we need that coverage to make sure we can detect if an adversary is inside. What they also do, MITRE, is the attack evaluations. It's a very good vendor evaluation, and I think it's one of the most important ones, not the important one actually. Why? Because it's objective, and MITRE is completely non-profit. They're not sponsored in any way, so what they're saying or what they're doing is actually true. Usually there are some vendors out there who is going to claim we get 100% protection on this or that. Most of the times they will fund the research also, so that's not that biased. It's not biased actually. MITRE is very transparent in what they're doing and how they're doing it. So you can see, again, also on the MITRE ATT&CK framework, okay, what testing are they doing? How do they do it? And they're really going to mimic real-life attacks they have seen also in the wild. So in that way, you can compare how is the vendor that I currently have doing, and are there better vendors out there who are better in detecting these types of advanced threats. So very good to do an evaluation on, and this is, well, I think the whole community actually says, okay, this is very valuable and well respected. So, okay, I've got now 5 minutes left. So what's next? Maybe Davey, you can talk about this one.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. So what Stan gave you is a high level overview of what the MITRE ATT&CK framework is and how you can use it, and what different types of well, acronyms that are important to understand the framework, of course. What we're going to do next week on the 16th of March is a deep dive hybrid session, technical session specifically on the MITRE ATT&CK framework and different tooling surrounding it. So we're gonna talk a few TTPs and how to find them in the ATT&CK framework, how to read it. We're going to discuss some APT groups like Lapsus, which you all probably know from the Okta breach or Uber breach. Rockstar Games, I believe, with the Grand Theft Auto was also Lapsus. If we have time, maybe we should also cover Wizard Spider. There's a new thing called attack campaigns. We're going to briefly touch it, as well as the MITRE defend matrix, which is actually the blue T component or for the MITRE ATT&CK framework, where the attack framework focuses on the different techniques and procedures used in attacks. As from the red teaming part, the defense side will actually do a sort of mapping on what kind of defenses you can put in place, or which are important to cover these different techniques. There's a brand new thing, so we're modifying our content here to talk about the Decider tool, which is a brand new tool we released the 1st of March, only 6 days ago, on how to map when you're under attack, how to take different elements of that attack and map it to the attack framework. The tool will do it for you based on a few questions, so you can have a high level overview if you've been under attack or you're doing an analysis of an attack, like how does this fit on the MITRE ATT&CK framework? What should I focus on? Where have we, which different techniques have been involved? Yeah, finally on the campaigns, we hope to cover a specific campaign and talk to you that also in detail. So a lot of content to cover, maybe a bit too much for the hour that we have, we'll see. But please come check it out. It's a hybrid session, so you can just dial in, or you can visit us at our exclusive office in Duffel. So hope to see you there. Thank you.
All right, and we've made it easy for you. Just take your phone and scan the QR code. I promise we're not phishing you. It's a legit link to our landing page that you can register for that session. So, okay, thank you, Davey. And maybe it went too fast, but we have a recording. You can also ask questions in the chat or later on. You know where to find us. We will send you the slides with also the sources we use to build this up. If you have a question now, feel free to ask. If not, I hope you enjoyed it. We try to give a lot of information, but we know everybody's limited in the amount of time they have in a day. So that's why we choose to have these 30-minute sessions for high-level explanations. So I hope you enjoyed the session, and until next time.